Hey guys, tonight we begin with something gentle and quietly unsettling. A calm journey into moments where reality itself seemed to pause, repeat, or slightly misstep. Tonight's documentary is called The Day Reality Broke, 15 Glitches in the Matrix You Can't Explain. Over the next few hours, we'll move slowly and peacefully through stories of time repeating itself, people vanishing and returning changed, objects appearing from nowhere, skies that didn't look real, and moments when the world felt slightly off. We'll explore eyewitness accounts, quiet scientific theories, forgotten reports, and whispered rumors that suggest reality may not be as solid as it feels. There's no rush here. Each chapter unfolds gently, allowing your mind to relax while curiosity stays softly awake. And if you stay with me until the end, everything we explore tonight will begin to connect, like scattered pieces of a larger pattern finally settling into place. Before we settle in and begin our peaceful journey, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if what I share here truly resonates with you. Your support helps me create more of these videos, and if you feel like it, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see the many corners of the world where we connect. Now, dim the lights, make yourself comfortable, and let's ease into tonight's journey together as we explore what lies ahead. Chapter 1. The Moment. Time repeated itself. Imagine a small kitchen in the quiet hours of evening. A kettle whistles, a clock ticks, and for a plain second or two, everything collapses inward and then opens again, only to find the exact same second happening twice. For some people, these are small private loops, a sentence said again without either speaker realizing they had already said it, a hand put down on a table and then found again in the same place, a breath repeated as though the world had exhaled and inhaled on the same beat. Start by closing your eyes for a moment. Let your breathing slow. Picture a slow, undulating ocean of sound, the distant hum of a fridge, the measured rhythm of your own chest. In that quiet, imagine a single second folding back onto itself like a page. That fold is where some people live their stories. The most common kind of repetition people describe is simple, déjà vu. But tonight, we're not merely passing along the familiar name. We're going deeper into those rarer reports where several people in the same room remember the same sentence being spoken twice, or where a wristwatch jumps back 30 seconds and then resumes, or where a public clock on a town square stops and then resumes with the exact same hands in the same positions as before. These are tiny, uncanny echoes of time, moments that feel like a small program restarting itself. There are gentle, scientific ways to think about this. Our brains are pattern engines. They constantly predict what will happen next. Sometimes the prediction aligns with reality so closely that it registers as familiarity. Psychological studies show that memory and expectation can create very convincing sensations of repetition. Sleep cycles, fatigue, stress, or a small mismatch in sensory input can create an overlap between perception and memory, producing the odd feeling that the present has already happened. But the stories we're about to listen to go further. They describe not only the interior sense of repetition, but shared external loops, instances where multiple witnesses remember the same sequence repeating itself in detail. In one calm account, 3 office workers described an argument that replayed verbatim for all of them, down to a joke at the end, and yet when they checked the office camera, the footage showed no repeat. In another quiet report, an entire bus full of people described the driver saying the same sentence twice in a row, same tone, same pause, and yet the recording device registered it only once. These shared loops shift the conversation from psychology alone into a domain that feels more like a shared misalignment, an overlap of memories between people rather than a solo mind trick. When that happens, disbelief softens and curiosity grows. Let me tell you a story, gentle and slow, about a woman named Mira. She lived by the sea and kept a small shop selling postcards and tea. One late autumn afternoon, a customer asked for a postcard featuring a lighthouse. Mira reached for a specific card, described its corner fold and the tiny sailboat in the photograph, and handed it over. The customer left. Mira turned to sweep the floor, and for a soft, bewildering second she felt the world pull. She heard, as clearly as if it were happening again, the bell above the door jingle and the customer's footsteps shuffle away. She blinked, and then it happened again. The bell jingled, the steps shuffled. Mira stood frozen by the counter, biscuits cooling on a plate, the kettle 10 minutes from empty. She saw herself reach for the same card a second time, handed it to the same customer, and the same bell chimed. Later she spoke to the customer on the phone. The customer remembered leaving the shop only once. Other staff who had been in the back room remembered their own tasks, but not the repeated moment. Mira kept the postcard in a drawer for a few nights, feeling as though she'd been given an extra turn at a single second in time. She never found the camera footage she asked for. The shop's small security camera had a gap inexplicably during those 3 minutes. Mira's story sits in the space between the internal, her sense of having lived a moment twice, and the external, an unexplained gap in the camera record. It's the kind of quiet, uncanny occurrence that changes how someone studies their ordinary days. It does not have to scream drama to be profound. It simply widens a small crack in what we believe to be linear time. Elsewhere, people speak of sequences that loop longer than a single sentence. Drivers report traffic signals that reset and force a brief rerun of the exact same cars in the same arrangement. A family around a dinner table describes the same conversation replaying in the same order, though when they check their phones, their messages are not duplicated. A nurse on an overnight ward reports witnessing a patient perform the same small ritual, closing a curtain, then opening it again, smiling the same way twice, until the staff member felt the room's air thin out for a second and then right itself. In the language of the curious, these are called time loops. I'll say the term with care. It carries heavy imaginings. We are not insisting they are cinematic reruns. Instead, we gently accept that sometimes small configurations of sensory input, memory and group perception line up to create something that feels structurally like a repeat. The cause is unknown in many of these reports, which is why they leave a soft, lingering wonder in the minds of those who experience them. How might such loops form? There are a few ways to imagine it, each described here in calm, simple terms. One idea is that of cognitive overlap, where one person's memory fragments are echoed into another's unconscious in the same environment, perhaps via subtle cues like eye contact micromuscles or the shared rhythm of breath. Another idea borrows from computer metaphors, a brief buffer reset, where a system momentarily fails to flush a second's data and instead replays the same output. There are also suggestions rooted in physics, rare, quiet anomalies in how we experience time, perhaps associated with brief gravitational shifts or electromagnetic fluctuations. These are not claims we can prove in a single breath, they're invitations to wonder. To help your mind rest into this theme, picture again a single second stretched into a slow ribbon of light. Watch that ribbon fold gently back and meet itself. Feel no urgency, only soft curiosity. If you have ever experienced déjà vu, bring that memory forward in a relaxed way, not as proof, but as kinship with others who have felt time thin. Notice how your body reacts, perhaps a tiny shiver, a tightening in the chest, or a quiet smile. Breathe with that sensation and let it pass like cloud. We'll also listen to accounts where the repetition felt purposeful, like a small correction. In a hush of stories from airport staff and long-distance drivers, some describe hearing a terse radio call twice, the second time sharper, as though someone had emphasized a detail that had been missed the first time. Airline crew sometimes talk about repeated checklist items that occur in the same order for certain flights, leaving them with the impression that something corrected a small oversight. These reports are not dramatic, they are subtle. They're more like a world politely nudging itself back into alignment, and there are the loops that carry emotion. Imagine the small private sweetness of a goodbye said twice, each repetition lengthening feeling rather than flattening it. People tell of saying, "I love you again," and finding the second time a softer echo, as if the universe wanted the sentiment to land. These experiences do not frighten. They comfort by offering redundancy in moments that matter. As the sun would set in Mira's seaside town, she would fold the shop's shutters and find a small calm in having been granted the replay. She began to notice small patterns, certain times of day, certain weather, certain kinds of attention seemed to precede the repeats. She never grew anxious. Instead, the extra minute became a small secret between her and the world, a gentle reminder that time, while steady, can also make room for another look. Before we close this chapter, rest assured, the goal is not to convince anyone of a single interpretation. The goal, softly, is to show you the shape of these experiences and to sit with them without hurry. If you're listening in a quiet room, let your breath match the slow rhythm of these stories. Imagine the possibilities without needing to lock them down. Let curiosity breathe. To keep you with us, a small thread to follow into later chapters. In Chapter 5, we'll hear about objects that appear from nowhere, and in Chapter 10, we will examine surveillance footage that seems to miss repeats and yet shows other anomalies. There is a pattern here, if patterns indeed exist, and by the end of our time together you may notice a growing impression that these events are not entirely isolated. For now, let the idea of a single repeated second sit like a smooth stone in your hand. Turn it over, feel its weight, and then set it gently down. When you're ready, let your breathing come back to its ordinary cadence. Keep your shoulders relaxed. Know that we move on from this quiet fold in time into new stories that will unfold with the same calm, steady pace. Chapter 2, People Who Vanished, Then Returned Changed. Hey guys, tonight we begin this chapter with a quiet invitation. Imagine someone you know walking out of a room and into a moment that does not fit the world when they return. Not a dramatic disappearance with sirens and search parties, but a soft, bewildering absence followed by a return that leaves a single, slow question in the air. Tonight we move gently through stories like that, people who vanished for a time and came back different in small, unmistakable ways. Picture a late summer afternoon in a suburban backyard. Children play under a warm sky. A father steps inside for a glass of water, and when he comes back he is smiling, but his pockets hold sand from a shoreline he doesn't remember visiting. He tells a story that skitters around the edges of memory, brief glimpses of a place he cannot name, an ache in his wrist that wasn't there before, and an odd certainty that nothing in the world is quite where it should be. The family listens with a mixture of comfort and worry. The days go on. The man sleeps differently now. Sometimes he wakes in the middle of the night whispering a sentence in a language he does not know. This is the gentle shape of the accounts we will explore. Missing hours, missing days, returns that carry a quiet strangeness. Let us begin with the kinds of disappearances that most people report. Brief absences of time. A person walks down a street and remembers crossing one corner, but not the space between. They arrive somewhere and cannot account for 10 minutes, an hour or more. Often it is easy to explain these moments as lapses in attention, a medical event, or even a dream. Sleepwalking, seizures, and dissociative episodes can all produce memory gaps. Medical professionals rightly investigate these possibilities, yet among the medical cases are reports that resist easy explanation. Instances where a missing time is accompanied by physical changes, unfamiliar scars, new preferences, or a sense of time being slightly skewed for the person who returned. Consider a softly told account from a small town where a young woman disappeared for the better part of a day. She returned wearing a coat that was not hers, humming a tune she had never heard, and insisting that the sun had set twice while she was gone. Her family took her to doctors. Tests showed no sign of trauma, no infection, no standard neurological cause. Over time, she described fragments. A low corridor with no doors that opened into a garden of tall grasses, a voice that spoke her name without a mouth. She could not place the location or the voice, but she remembered the feeling of being watched with curiosity rather than threat. The doctors called it dissociation, the family called it worry, and neighbours called it a strange twist in an ordinary life. The woman herself, soft and careful, kept a journal. The entry for the missing hours was a single line. I left and the light was different. There are reports like this from many places. People who step away for minutes or days and return with a changed tone, new fears, or new memories that do not align with their lives before. Some returnees describe the world as if a seam had been sewn a little differently. A familiar street granted a new shop, a childhood friend's eyes slightly altered. Others come back with skills they did not have before or a scar they cannot explain. These changes are rarely dramatic in the cinematic sense. They are small, human, and quietly unsettling. We should gently consider how memory and identity work. Memory is not a fixed archive. It is a living, reconstructive process. Trauma, stress, and sleep disorders can reshape memory in ways that leave gaps. People who undergo intense experiences, medical, psychological, or environmental, may emerge with altered recollections. That is a calm, grounded explanation. Yet when a cluster of these cases carries similar features, a repeated report of the world felt slightly off, or multiple returnees in the same region describing the same strange corridor, curiosity deepens. It does not demand a single explanation. It asks us to hold both the medical and the mysterious in the same gentle hand, and to listen without rushing to judgment. Let me tell you about a whispered rumour from long-haul truckers that passed around late-night diners. Sometimes a driver pulls over to rest and wakes up 3 hours later with a different radio station playing, a different highway name on the GPS, and a patch of gravel stuck to a tyre that shouldn't be there. These stories are told low, with hands around coffee cups and always with a laugh that hides a trace of seriousness. Truckers are used to long roads and strange fatigue. Still, the repetition of the reports, drivers from different regions describing a similar sense of temporally misplaced moments, creates a quiet pattern worth noticing. There are also accounts from those who work late shifts, hospital staff, security guards, and emergency responders who say that sometimes a colleague will vanish from a room for an hour, return, and then move through tasks with a different rhythm. Nurses tell of a co-worker who came back from a break and could not remember which patients they had already checked, though their notes were complete. Security guards talk about patrol partners returning with smudges of paint on their shoes from a building that had been boarded up for years. These are not sensational reports. They are practical observations about real people in routine settings. They are the kind of details that accumulate into an uneasy, soft mosaic. certain return stories involve physical signs that simply cannot be explained by everyday activity. A fisherman returned from a short errand with sand in his hair, though he hadn't left town. A librarian came back from lunch with a small, folded piece of paper containing a name that did not belong to anyone in the town. A child returned home after playing in a yard and insisted that the house next door had a different colour that afternoon, though the neighbour's paint had not changed when the adults went to check. These small, verifiable details, sand where there should be none, a paper with an unfamiliar name, a colour that reasserts itself only in memory, are the soft spices in a stew of stories that nudge toward a larger pattern. It is easy and reasonable to invoke mental health or neurology when we hear these accounts. Conditions like temporal lobe epilepsy, psychogenic amnesia, and dissociative fugue can create episodes of lost time. These explanations are essential, compassionate, and typically the first line of inquiry. But some researchers and observers have noticed cases where diagnostic testing finds no clear cause, and where multiple witnesses share consistent details that are not easily attributed to a single mind's reconstruction. When that happens, the explanation grows more complex. Some people turn to cultural narratives, stories of pilgrimages, rituals, and liminal spaces where identity shifts. Others borrow metaphors from computing, a temporary displacement like an object moved to a different folder and returned with subtle changes. There are also stories that carry an emotional honesty that moves listeners. A woman who vanished for 2 days returned with the urge to plant a row of lavender along her front fence. She could not explain why she liked lavender so much. She said only that it felt necessary, like closing a small circle. Months later, neighbours would notice the lavender and describe it as if it had always been there. Small acts like this, new hobbies, food suddenly adored, tattoos acquired without a preceding desire, create a portrait of returnees who are not broken but altered in ways that are neither wholly harmful nor wholly trivial. They are people who carry a quiet otherness home with them. Another strand of accounts involves people who return with memories of places that do not appear on maps. A man will describe a village beneath a low mountain that he remembers visiting during his missing time, complete with the name of a baker who sells bread shaped like crescent moons. The baker's name is recorded in the man's memory with the clarity of a childhood recollection, but no record or local knowledge confirms the village. Some listeners will call this a confabulation, a memory made up unconsciously to fill a gap. Others feel the tug of something that might be archival, the possibility that a place existed once, or in a slightly altered reality, and left only a faint echo behind. Through all of these narratives, the tone stays soft. We're not pushing toward alarm or certainty. Instead, we let the story sit in the room with us, like guests who have come for tea and stay to tell a single important thing. We listen for patterns without forcing an answer. That listening yields small, meaningful themes. The return is often accompanied by a slight, persistent feeling of not quite right. Physical traces occasionally remain, and returnees frequently exhibit calm rather than panic, as if they were reconciled to an experience that happened to them rather than against them. To keep you engaged and moving through our time together, hold on to a gentle thought. Later chapters will explore phenomena that intersect with these disappearances. The Mandela effect's revisions of shared memory, surveillance footage anomalies that sometimes show people vanishing mid-frame, and whispered claims that scientists quietly shelved certain lines of inquiry. Each piece touches the others like constellations around a dark sky. Watching the whole can change how any single point looks. Now, take a long, slow breath. Let the story settle into a comfortable space behind your eyes. If you find your pulse quickening, place a hand over your heart for a moment and breathe into it. remember that these are human stories, soft, strange, and quietly persistent. They are not meant to frighten you. They are meant to open a small door to wonder. When you're ready, we will continue to explore how communities react when multiple people remember a place that seems to have vanished from public record, and how archivists and historians sometimes whisper about documents that no longer appear where they once were. For now, let the idea of a person returning change drift in your mind like a paper boat on a slow river. Chapter 3. The Mandela Effect That Shouldn't Exist. Imagine settling into a comfortable chair, the room quiet, your breathing slow and steady, and holding a memory you feel certain about. Not a vague impression, but a clear picture. A logo you have seen 100 times, a line from a speech you remember hearing, a map shape you learned in school. Now imagine discovering calmly and without drama that the world insists your memory is wrong. Not just your memory, but the same memory shared by millions of others. This is where this chapter begins. Not with shock, but with a gentle unease that grows the longer you sit with it. The Mandela effect is often introduced through famous examples, but tonight we go deeper, past the surface-level curiosities and into the quieter, more troubling cases. At its core, this effect describes large groups of people remembering the same detail in the same incorrect way, according to official records. Names spelled differently than remembered, events unfolding in ways that no longer match archived footage, logos that appear to have subtly shifted over time. For many, the first encounter with such a discrepancy is easy to dismiss. Memory is flexible after all. But the deeper one looks, the more difficult dismissal becomes. Human memory does not work like a recording device. It is shaped by emotion, repetition, and context. Psychologists explain that we reconstruct memories each time we recall them, sometimes blending details from similar experiences. This explanation makes sense for individual errors. But the Mandela effect feels different because it appears collective. Entire groups recall the same incorrect version, even when those groups are separated by geography, age, and culture. That shared certainty is what gives the effect its quiet power. Now let us move gently beyond the examples everyone knows, and into lesser discussed cases that carry more weight. There are cartographers and geography teachers who remember specific border shapes that no longer match modern or historical maps. Some recall coastlines that curved inward where they now curve outward. Others remember islands positioned farther north or south than they appear today. When these individuals check atlases from decades past, the maps insist the current version has always been correct. The teachers do not panic. They simply sit with the strange feeling that a solid foundation has shifted beneath their feet. Archivists tell similar stories in hushed tones. These are people whose work depends on careful record keeping. A few have reported opening familiar files to find altered dates or wording that conflicts with their long-term memory of the document. One archivist described a recorded broadcast transcript that no longer matched the audio she remembered transcribing years earlier. The change was subtle, only a sentence altered, but the meaning shifted just enough to unsettle her. She checked access logs. No one had edited the file. She checked backups. They matched the new version, not her memory. At this point, it is natural to return to psychology for comfort. Group memory errors can spread through social reinforcement. Once a version of a story takes hold, people may unconsciously align their memories with it. This is well documented, yet some Mandela effect cases predate the internet or mass discussion. People report discovering the discrepancy on their own, sometimes decades before encountering anyone else who remembered it the same way. That isolation makes the shared memory harder to explain as social influence. There are also physical artifacts that deepen the mystery. Old personal journals, handwritten notes, and classroom materials sometimes reflect the remembered version rather than the official one. A teacher's notes from the 1980s showing a spelling that supposedly never existed. A child's drawing copied from a logo that, according to modern records, was never designed that way. These items are not proof of altered reality, but they are traces of something that refuses to settle quietly into error. Some people describe the Mandela effect not as confusion, but as a feeling of overlap, like remembering a previous arrangement of the same world. They speak of it gently, saying things like, "It's the same, but it used to sit differently." That language is important. It suggests continuity rather than fantasy. The world didn't become unrecognizable. It adjusted slightly, like furniture moved an inch to the left in the dark. There are rumors, shared softly among those who work with historical media, that entire collections have been flagged for silent correction. The phrase itself is vague, but the implication is that inconsistencies were noticed and resolved without announcement, not because they were errors, but because they were destabilizing. According to these rumors, the corrections were not edits in the traditional sense, but alignments, bringing records into agreement with the dominant version of events. Whether these stories are true is less important than the fact that they exist and persist, passed from one careful professional to another. Another angle comes from people who experience the Mandela effect alongside other glitches. They notice that when a memory discrepancy surfaces, other odd things tend to cluster around it. Clocks desync briefly, electronics restart, conversations repeat. These accompanying details suggest a broader disturbance rather than a single faulty recollection. Again, none of this is dramatic. It is subtle, like static at the edge of a signal. Imagine a man standing in a grocery store aisle, staring at a product he has bought for years. The label is wrong. Not dramatically, just enough to make him pause. He feels a slight pressure behind his eyes, a sense of standing between two versions of the same moment. He shrugs, buys the item, and goes home. That night, he dreams of rearranging shelves in a store that never quite settles. This is how the Mandela effect enters daily life. Not as fear, but as disorientation. Some researchers who lean towards simulation theory suggest a calm possibility, that what we call reality is maintained by a set of rules and stored states, much like data. When states are updated or corrected, most people accept the new version without noticing, but a small percentage retain access to the prior state, not consciously, but through memory traces. In this view, Mandela effects are not errors, but leftovers, cached data that did not fully clear. This idea is presented quietly, without insisting on belief, but it resonates with those who experience the effect firsthand. What makes this chapter especially important is how it connects to the others. If people can remember previous versions of facts, then time repetition, vanished people, and altered places begin to feel less separate. They start to look like different expressions of the same underlying instability. Memory becomes a witness, not a flaw. It records something that once fit, even if the world insists it never did. As you rest with this idea, allow your breathing to stay slow. Let the tension in your face soften. You're not required to decide what is true. You're simply observing a pattern that many others have noticed before you. Curiosity here is gentle, not demanding. Later chapters will explore physical spaces that seem to vanish from maps and footage that shows people fading from view. When you reach those moments, remember this chapter. Remember that memory may not be the weakest part of the system, but the most sensitive. It may be the first thing to notice when reality edits itself, For now, let your thoughts drift. Picture an old photograph album where one picture no longer matches the memory of the day it was taken. You do not tear it out. You simply turn the page, aware that something quiet and important has just passed. Chapter 4: NPC Behavior. When people stop acting human. There is a strange, quiet shape to moments when people behave like they're going through motions without being fully present. Imagine a street in late evening light where everyone moves at the same slow pace, their faces set, their hands repeating small tasks as if following a script. It is not frightening. It is simply odd, like watching a play where the actors forgot someone changed the scene. Tonight we look closely at those moments, slowly, calmly, because they are often where ordinary life bends in a way that asks for attention. Start by picturing a late-night convenience store. The hum of the refrigeration units is steady. The bell above the door rings when someone comes in, and the clerk moves through the same gestures he's used 1,000 times. Now imagine that for 15 minutes he uses the same phrase to every customer, in the same tone, with the same pause. Or picture a park bench where two people sit and repeat the same small laugh at the same interval, even though the joke that triggered it came only once. These are the small, everyday shapes of what people online call NPC behavior. Moments when humans seem to act like background characters. There are many gentle and reasonable explanations for automatic behaviors. Habits are powerful. When sleep is short, when bodies are tired, people fall back on familiar sequences. In a busy job that repeats the same tasks, the body can move while the mind rests. This is not new. It is part of how humans conserve energy. But layered onto these ordinary explanations are accounts that feel less tidy. Stories from workers who see clusters of people acting in a way that is too uniform, too precise, as if multiple people had been given the same cue at once. Listen to a calm account from a night shift security guard who once worked in an industrial park. He tells of walking a perimeter and seeing two maintenance workers near a delivery bay. Both were standing, head tilted, hands at their sides, looking at a wall like mannequins. When he called out to them, one blinked slowly and repeated the same phrase twice before resuming the silent pose. The guard paused, radio in his hand, and watched. The two men then walked toward him in perfect sync for a few steps before their movements became normal, and they went on as if nothing had happened. This kind of report is told without drama, a simple recording of an odd observation. The guard did not feel fear so much as a puzzled attention, like someone noticing a note out of tune in a familiar song. Drivers share similar stories, gentle and specific. A bus driver on an overnight route once described a cluster of passengers who all reached into their bags at the exact same second and produced the exact same item. A folded map with a blue cover. No one else in the city seemed to have that map. The driver chalked it up to coincidence at first, but later he found the same pattern on another route at a different time. Truckers and taxi drivers talk late over coffee about passengers who stare straight ahead, unblinking, or about pedestrians who pause mid-step as if waiting for a cue. These are not horror tales. They are small facts that add up and ask quietly for explanation. Psychology and neurology offer calm, anchored ways to think about these moments. Automaticity is a normal process. The brain stores routines so you can do them without thinking. This is how you can walk and talk at the same time, or tie your shoe without looking. Sleep deprivation and fatigue increase reliance on these stored routines. Social mimicry explains how groups tend to mirror each other subconsciously. When one person smiles, others often mirror it. Mass behavior can become synchronized by simple cues: a sound, a flashing light, a shared fatigue. Still, when patterns appear too exact, repeated across different contexts, They shift the conversation from routine to something more mysterious. There are also reports from people who work in controlled environments, factories, warehouses, and data centers, where repetitive motion is part of the job. Workers in these places sometimes report seeing colleagues step out of their tasks for a moment and then slip back in exactly as if no time had passed. Factory foremen speak of machines and humans falling into synchronized rhythms that feel uncanny. Night shift staff at hospitals note patients or visitors who move like marionettes for brief minutes and then return to normal. Again, the tone is seldom alarm. More often, it's a soft curiosity, an observation filed away for later thought. Some witnesses offer details that deepen the sense of strangeness. An overnight nurse recalls a visitor who stood at the foot of a ward bed and recited the same 3 words in the same measured tone to 3 different patients who were asleep. The nurse could not explain why the visitor did this, or where they had learned the words, and security footage showed a figure at the foot of the bed but recorded no audio. In another account, a delivery driver watched a cluster of people at a late-night food stand all order the same item, with the same small motion, and then walk away in sequence, like leaves falling in a quiet wind. It is important to keep compassion in our thinking. Many behaviors that look robotic come from pain, stress, illness, or fatigue. People living with certain neurological conditions may move in ways that look odd to others. Sleep disorders and medication side effects can alter behavior. Trauma can make someone emotionally shut down and act in a way that seems scripted. When we hear these stories, we should not reach for sensational explanations first. We hold both empathy and curiosity together. At the same time, there are patterns that invite a wider lens. A small group of witnesses across different cities report seeing the same type of behavior. Clusters of people repeating phrases, pauses in movement that line up across a crowd, and moments where strangers complete each other's sentences without knowing each other. These accounts often come from workers who spend long hours observing public spaces, the ones who notice what most of us do not. The consistency of their reports forms a quiet chorus. Some speculate in soft, imaginative terms. What if these moments are not human error or fatigue, but brief overlay, background characters loading into place, a rendering of people that lags and then catches up? It is a calm metaphor drawn from technology. When a scene in a video game fails to load assets, characters may flicker or replay a small animation. The metaphor resonates with some because it mirrors the shared feeling of watching people move in odd, repeatable ways. This is not an argument, it is an idea to sit with. Metaphors help us hold strange experiences without forcing them into a single explanation. There are also stories of clusters of NPC-like behavior that coincide with other anomalies. A city bus that carried a cluster of unmoving passengers might later be associated with a missing time event, or a shop full of silent robotic customers might be followed by a power fluctuation. These overlaps are the kind of detail that interest careful listeners. They suggest patterns rather than isolated quirks. To help your attention stay with us, consider a small thread to pull later. In Chapter 10, we'll look at surveillance footage that sometimes records odd, human-like freezes and disappearances. In Chapter 5, we will hear about objects appearing where none were before. These later threads weave with the NPC stories to create a wider cloth. If something like a background character exists in one place, it may be noticed in other ways too. Now, breathe slowly and imagine a quiet street where movement is soft and synchronized like waves. Watch a single figure pause in time, then continue, and notice how the world does not rush to explain it. Keep your face relaxed. Let curiosity sit beside calm. These are human stories, sometimes medical, sometimes social, sometimes simply baffling, but always worth listening to carefully. Chapter 5. Objects that appeared from nowhere. Imagine sitting alone in a quiet room, the soft light of late afternoon coming through the window, and suddenly noticing an object you did not place there. At first you think you forgot, then you check the corners, the pockets, the places you usually put things, and still you cannot explain how it arrived. It's a small thing, maybe a coin, a key, or a child's toy. It is ordinary and impossible at the same time. Tonight we will move slowly through many such stories, learning not just the facts of each case, but the gentle human details that make them feel real. Start with the simplest kind of report. Small items appearing on a table or shelf when no one in the house remembers putting them there. A woman tells of finding a small brass button on her kitchen counter one morning. She lives alone. She looks in drawers and pockets, checks the laundry, and finds no explanation. The button is old and not from anything she owns. She sets it on a windowsill and forgets it for a week. When she returns, the button is gone, and in its place is a folded scrap of paper with a single word she doesn't recognize. Months later, she finds the same button in a different town, on a park bench near a river. Each time the event is quiet and private, happening without fanfare, and the person who experiences it is left with a soft question. Across many decades, curious minds have collected similar accounts. In the older literature of parapsychology, these events are sometimes called apports, objects that appear seemingly out of nowhere during certain seances or rituals. Those older reports often came with ceremony and strong belief. The modern accounts we will hear are usually not ritualized. They are practical and small. A new spoon in a locked drawer, a paperback book on a sealed shelf, a child's toy found under a pillow where no child had slept. Because these stories are quiet, they are easy to dismiss. But when they come with verifiable details, sealed rooms, security footage, witnesses who are careful and trustworthy, the story becomes harder to shelve. Consider a report from a closed office. The building is locked overnight with an alarm system and a single key holder. In the morning, the key holder opens the office and finds a brand new pack of pens on the executive's desk. No deliveries were scheduled. The security log shows no authorized entry. Cameras show the empty room until the morning sweep. The pack of pens is a common brand, nothing exotic, but the presence of a fresh, sealed item in a sealed space is enough to stir curiosity. The staff talk about it. They check delivery records, and they eventually stop mentioning it because there is no clear answer. They keep the pack of pens in a drawer as a small reminder that something odd once happened there. Another quiet and careful account comes from a locked hotel room. A traveller returns to find a small wallet on the nightstand. The wallet contains a photograph of a person the traveller barely remembers meeting at a train station months earlier. The hotel confirms that cleaning staff had not entered the room since the traveller checked out. The traveller keeps the wallet for a while, carries it on trips, and sometimes shows the photo to friends who shake their heads. They are not trying to scare anyone. They're simply telling a soft, strange story. There are cases that involve larger items. A shipping warehouse worker once reported that a stack of new chairs appeared in a storage area that had been counted and locked. The inventory record showed no incoming shipment. The worker and his supervisor both checked the security cameras. The cameras captured routine movement, but no delivery. The chairs remained, neatly wrapped in plastic, as if someone had placed them there with care and then left. The company logged it as a mystery, and eventually moved the chairs into circulation. People joked about haunted furniture for a while, then life returned to ordinary rhythm. But a handful of attentive employees still remembered that the chairs had not been there the night before. Some stories carry small physical traces that deepen the mystery. A mother found a single, tiny, unfamiliar bead on her child's bedroom floor. The bead was not from any toy she owned. She kept it in a small box. A year later, she found a second identical bead inside a book she had not opened in months. She showed both beads to a friend who later told her about beads that appear to people on and off for years. The friend didn't offer an explanation. She only offered a steady hand and a listening ear. We should pause here and consider the ordinary explanations. Objects can be misremembered. Visitors might have placed an item and forgotten. Rodents or small animals can move things. Cleaning staff might enter with good reason. Inventory systems can fail. Human error is a powerful common force. It explains many mysteries calmly and clearly, yet it does not explain everything. When items appear in sealed rooms, when security footage shows no delivery, or when multiple trustworthy witnesses report the same impossible fact, the ordinary explanations strain. There are also technical reasons objects might appear where they should not. Shipping errors, mislabeled packages, and inventory mistakes can place objects in the wrong location. Manufacturing defects send odd items into the world. Lost and found systems can reintroduce items in places they were not expected. These are plausible, often proven explanations. Still, the accounts that interest us most are those that resist these checks. Sealed rooms, missing security logs, cameras that show no hand placing an item, items appearing in places with no practical route by which they could have arrived. Some accounts suggest a different kind of mechanism, transient openings or overlaps between states of the world. Tech-savvy witnesses describe moments like a buffer drop, where one version of a room includes an object and another does not. If those versions briefly overlap, an object may appear to materialize. This language borrows from computing metaphors, loading assets, caches, and buffers, but it can be a useful way to imagine small, transient mismatches between how different observers experience the same space. We will also hear of items that appear with context, keys that show up next to a door that was locked from the inside, coins that appear in a child's hand with no prior pocketing, and personal letters that arrive addressed to a person who had never moved. In a few careful cases, forensics teams were called to examine residues on the objects. They found nothing unusual, no exotic compounds, no traces of manipulation. That absence of evidence is not proof of anything, but it does leave the case open and quiet, like a door left ajar. To add texture to our listening, imagine a slow, low hum in the background as each story unfolds. It is the sound of ordinary life, a refrigerator, distant traffic, the soft rustle of paper. These sounds anchor the odd to the everyday. They remind us that the strange often happens within the ordinary, and that the ordinary is where our attention can find steady ground. There are also stories that move beyond objects into spontaneous rearrangements. Furniture that shifts slightly overnight, a bookshelf with one book turned backward when no one in the house remembers touching it, a painting that hangs straight on the wall one day and inches to the left the next. These are not violent events, they are small, careful movements that seem to suggest an unseen hand, or a slight misplacement in the world's laying out. In a few cases, neighbours reported similar small changes at the same time, a set of mailboxes reordered, a lamppost temporarily missing a bulb. These local clusters suggest that objects and places can both be part of the same gentle phenomenon. As with other chapters, there are doubtless hoaxes and mistakes woven through the true reports. Sometimes a story grows in the retelling. Memory plays tricks. People want to find meaning. Yet even after accounting for these human tendencies, a pattern remains. Small objects appear in unexpected ways, often leaving simple, ordinary witnesses with a calm, open question. To keep you with us, remember a thread that will tie into later chapters. In Chapter 10, we will review surveillance footage that sometimes records objects appearing or people disappearing. In Chapter 6, we will consider places that are not where maps say they should be. These overlapping patterns help form a quiet, growing picture that the material world sometimes rearranges itself in gentle, subtle ways. For now, breathe slowly and imagine a small brass button on a windowsill, the light catching its metal, the world around it continuing in soft rhythm. You do not need to decide what it means. You only need to notice it, hold it without rush, and let the sense of wonder be calm, like a low, steady tide. Chapter 6. Buildings, roads, and places that don't exist on maps. There are corners of the world that feel as familiar as a well-worn sweater, places people visit in memory more than in fact. You know the kind. A small street you walked down as a child, a shop that sold candies the colour of sunlight, a bridge you are sure crossed a river. Then one day you look at a map or ask a new neighbour and find nothing where you remember the place to be. The street is gone on every chart. The shop is not listed in any directory. This chapter moves slowly through those quiet losses and the strange reports that follow them. Imagine a town square at dusk. The lampposts throw long, soft shadows, and someone sells roasted corn from a cart. A familiar lane runs off the square, narrow and lined with cobblestones. You remember the lane because of a blue door halfway down, a blue the exact colour of a summer sky. You return one day and find only a brick wall. You ask an older local and they hesitate, then say they remember a lane once, but their memory is hazy. You search the town records and find no mention of the blue door or the lane. That small conflict between memory and record is the place where many people first notice something odd. There are many natural and plain reasons a place might vanish from maps. Cities change, buildings are demolished, roads are rerouted, names are altered. A flood may wash away a shore, an earthquake may shift a path, and development often erases small shops for larger blocks. Maps are updated, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, and paper maps can keep older shapes even after the ground has moved. These are simple facts of life and often explain most of the mismatches between memory and map. But some stories go beyond those common changes. They come from people who keep careful records, librarians, local historians, surveyors. One reporter might find old photographs showing a small park where modern maps show only a parking lot. A teacher may have an old school map with a playground marked that no longer appears in any archive. When multiple, independent records and personal memories point to a place that has no official trace, curiosity grows. Consider a quiet account from a coastal village where fishermen for years talked about a narrow pier that jutted out like a finger into calm water. Older fishermen swore it had been there when they were young, easy to step on and fish from. Newer maps show only open shoreline. One evening a storm reveals a fragment of wood beneath the tide, maybe an old pier remnant, but not enough to match the clear memory of a full structure. The community keeps telling the story anyway, and each telling polishes the memory until it shines. The pier becomes a kind of collective jewel worn by the telling, and its absence on maps becomes more than a cartographic oddity. It becomes part of the town's quiet myth. Sometimes the missing place is not gone because it was destroyed, but because records act as if it never existed. People who work in municipal offices have told soft, hesitant stories of files that used to name a small lane or a building, but now list a different address or no record at all. In some cases, the paper trail seems to stop mid-sentence. Archivists have described opening an old deed or plan and finding a blank where a block of text should be. They do not leap to a supernatural claim. They speak in low, careful tones about lost pages, burned ledgers, or files that were misfiled. But when several such instances cluster in time or place, the town's shared memory grows odd in a way that repeats across streets and towns. There are also reports of roads that simply shift their course in the minds of whole neighborhoods. Long-time residents will describe a shortcut they used as teenagers that cut through a patch of trees. New residents and new maps show no such path. Yet the old-timers insist on the route's exact curve, the old oak at its bend, and the small stone with initials painted long ago. These memories persist in conversation, in family stories, and in the odd footnote of a local history book. When maps say otherwise, the mismatch feels like a small wrongness, as if a seam had been moved in the fabric of place. Technology has added a new wrinkle. Digital maps, GPS, and satellite imagery are powerful tools, but they can also be brittle. People sometimes find that a favourite lane that used to appear in their map app is suddenly replaced by a blank patch or a new bypass. At other times, a house appears in a satellite image for a few months and then vanishes from public view. Technical explanations are real. Old imagery is replaced by new. Companies redraw routes, and private property changes hands. But the feeling that something once solid can disappear from view without explanation is jarring. For communities whose life centres on small streets and shops, a missing place on a map can feel like a small grief. There are more unsettling accounts too, stories of whole districts that people remember but which do not appear in official registries. A group of neighbours might recall a row of tenement houses where a modern campus now stands. They remember door numbers, a bakery, a small cinema. Yet when they consult municipal records, nothing lists those addresses. Sometimes the explanation is urban renewal. Entire blocks were razed, with records archived under different names. Other times there is no neat explanation, and the older residents keep telling the tale as if repeating a charm against erasure. These stories often carry small, convincing details. A particular bench's carved initials, a shop sign with a crooked N, the smell of jasmine behind a wall. These details anchor memory to the senses. They make the place feel less like a figment of imagination and more like a lived space. People repeat them to each other, and the repetition knits memory into community history. When that memory meets a cold, official record that says no such place, the result is a soft rupture. Another layer emerges when we hear of municipal records that change without an obvious reason. Public servants, clerks, record keepers, and archivists sometimes whisper about files that were accessible last month and not accessible now. They find ledgers with missing entries or scanned maps with altered notations. In some cases it's clerical error, a misscan, or a lost box in a basement. In other cases the absence is harder to account for, and even careful professionals feel a quiet unease. They do not talk of conspiracies. They only pass along a consistent observation. The paper trail blurs in odd ways from time to time. As we listen, it's worth noting that human memory is generous in its creativity. People reconstruct places from fragments, half-remembered sounds, a scent, a piece of a conversation, and sometimes different people recollections assemble into a cohesive but inaccurate map. That is a common and simple cause of many phantom place accounts. But even after accounting for that, some clusters of reports remain stubborn. Small towns with generations of oral histories sometimes remember things that records do not. The stories are not necessarily proof of anything metaphysical, but they are strong evidence that our sense of place is both personal and shared, and that official records do not always capture the full texture of lived life. There are also tales from scientists and surveyors who note odd errors in coordinate systems or odd mismatches between street-level plans and satellite tiles. A survey team might find a property's boundary drawn one way on one map and a different way on another. GPS data might lead an engineer to a stretch of empty field where a house should stand. These are often technical issues. Coordinate systems change, One dataset may be newer than another, but to someone who remembers a road running between the fields, such technical shifts feel like more than a glitch. They feel like erasure. To keep you listening, hold a soft thread. Later in this documentary, we'll return to traces and property records and security footage that sometimes support personal memory. We will meet archivists and night shift workers who notice small things and could not shake them. We will also explore how children remember different versions of the same street and how that ties back into the places that refuse to be listed. If you have ever walked a lane you cannot find on a map, or if you remember a shop that seems to have been rewritten out of the records, consider leaving a comment. These stories build the map of human memory in a way that no official chart can. Your small account may join the gentle chorus of others who remember. For now, breathe slowly. Picture the blue door you remember, the exact shade of sky, and let the image rest without demand. Notice how place lives in both paper and feeling, and how maps capture only some of what we hold. The quiet space between record and memory is where many of these stories live, and it is also where the possibility of something stranger sits, softly, like a page left open and waiting. Chapter 7. The Day the Sky Looked Wrong. There are moments when you look up and everything overhead reads like a sentence that has lost its punctuation. The sky is not simply blue or grey, it is off, like a painting a shade too bright or a photograph slightly double exposed. Light behaves politely but oddly. Clouds that pause in one place like someone holding a breath. Lines of light that march in straight grids, or a wash of colour that moves across the horizon as if someone is rubbing a soft hand across a glass pane. These are not the dramatic storms or brilliant auroras you read about in the news. They're quieter, skies that feel slightly staged, like a backdrop propped in front of the world. Start by imagining a calm afternoon stretching into evening. The edges of clouds turn gold as the sun lowers. A few people notice that the clouds seem to hang in blocks, flattened at the edges, the lines between them unnaturally sharp. Drivers slow and look up. A few take photos with their phones. The photos show those same flat edges and a faint, almost imperceptible lattice of light that seems to sit above the clouds. Later, when people compare shots taken from different neighbourhoods, they find the same lattice appears in each photograph, faint as a watermark. No weather report explains it fully. Meteorologists offer standard phenomena: wave clouds, lenticular formations, high-altitude cirrus. But the images carry a different, persistent quality that keeps the story alive. There are many simple scientific ways to explain unusual skies, and they are worth listening to because they are true and steady. The atmosphere is a layered moving thing. Temperature, wind, and humidity at different heights create strange, beautiful patterns. Lenticular clouds can look like stacked discs. Noctilucent clouds glow like a ghostly froth after sunset. Mirages and Fata Morgana can bend and duplicate coastlines and ships. Airborne particles scatter light in different ways. Rayleigh scattering gives us blue skies, while larger particles shift colours toward red at dusk. Pilots and meteorologists know this language well. They describe how small pockets of wind shear can hold a cloud in place, making it look unnaturally still while the world beneath moves. These are firm, practical ideas that explain a large number of odd sky reports calmly and clearly. Yet some sky stories keep a different rhythm. People report skies that freeze in place for whole minutes at a time, as if someone had hit pause. Others describe brief grid-like patterns that appear and disappear, like a faint net laid across the atmosphere. In certain accounts, the lighting behaves as if it has a mind of its own. streetlights that flicker in sequence with a band of clouds, or shafts of sunlight that slice the same patch of ground twice in a row, despite the sun's steady arc. Pilots sometimes speak of seeing light behave strangely at high altitudes, a patch of sky brighter than it should be, with a shimmer that resolves into straight lines when viewed from a cockpit. Airline crews will mention it softly in crew rooms, the way people mention a curious dream that won't leave them. Consider the story of a small coastal town where, one summer evening, a broad sheet of cloud seemed to pause over the bay and remained fixed while the rest of the sky drifted. Fishermen in their boats reported a soft, distant hum at the same time, as if something low and steady was singing under the water. Cameras on shore captured the paused cloud. Satellite footage taken later that night showed a normal pattern. Local weather records showed no reason for the freeze. The town did not panic. People simply talk about it over coffee for years afterwards, as if naming it keeps it smaller and less strange. There are other reports with an uncanny clarity. A pilot flying at dusk who saw a sudden grid of faint light, structured, almost architectural, spread out below him. He described it not as dangerous, but as puzzling, like looking down at a floor plan that did not belong to any city he knew. The pilot filed a brief report and later mentioned it in an online forum populated by other aviators. A few others chimed in with similar experiences: grids of light, thin streaks, odd layering that resembled rendering artifacts in a digital image. People who fly a lot see things ordinary people do not. Their observations matter because they are grounded in routine, professional attention. Some scientists and observers suggest atmospheric phenomena that are not yet well understood could be at play. High-altitude ice crystals can produce halos and arcs. Electromagnetic disturbances can influence how charged particles dance near the top of the atmosphere, and under specific conditions this could create faint, structured patterns. There are also human-made causes. Aircraft formations, drone swarms, and even light pollution can create illusions in the sky. Military exercises occasionally use flares, illumination devices, and other tools that change the look of the heavens temporarily. These are practical, real-world causes that should always be considered first. But the accounts that linger are those where witnesses report multiple anomalies at once. A town reports a frozen cloud, a hum beneath the water, and a series of clocks that all stuttered for a few seconds on the same evening. Or an airport observes a faint grid of light while control tower instruments register a minor but unexplained electromagnetic spike. These clusters of phenomena, the sky that looks wrong and other oddities happening at the same time, create a more complicated picture. They invite careful people to ask, are these separate events, or are they facets of a single, wider disturbance? There are also gentle personal stories that add texture. A child who draws a sky with squares instead of clouds, because that is what she saw that afternoon. An elderly man who talks about seeing the sun split into two narrow beams for a breath, as if someone had tilted a pane of glass. A night worker who remembers the moon turned the wrong pearly colour and felt an odd, soft pressure on his ears for a second. These are not dramatic claims, they're human and precise. They stay with listeners because they are told without spectacle, in the same tone someone uses to describe a memorable meal or a first kiss. To imagine how such sky anomalies might connect to other kinds of glitches, picture the world as many overlapping layers: weather, memory, recording devices, and human perception. If one layer hiccups, others might show small corresponding errors. A light grid in the sky might be the visual counterpart to a hum you hear, a minor clock stutter you feel, or a surveillance camera that misses a frame. In later chapters, we will return to such overlaps. We will see how reports of strange skies sometimes coincide with sightings of objects appearing from nowhere, brief failures in gravity, or security footage that freezes. The possibility grows that these are not isolated curiosities but part of a larger pattern. As you listen, allow the images to float before your eyes like soft clouds. Picture the sky as a great, patient canvas that sometimes takes on a brushstroke or two that do not belong, an extra texture, a faint grid, a paused cloud. Imagine watching it with friends, or from the window of a slow-moving train, and feeling the easy human need to point and say, "Look." Notice how pointing at the sky is both a social act and a small ritual. It pulls people into the same moment, and when more than one person shares the oddness, the event becomes more than private. It becomes a shared line in a town story. Keep your breathing slow. Let the sky drift away like a light curtain. Remember that most strange skies have calm, scientific explanations. At the same time, allow that some small number of events resist those explanations, clustering with other anomalies in ways that invite a quieter kind of wonder. Later we will meet pilots, scientists and archivists who felt that same quiet curiosity and began to gather their notes. For now, rest in the image of a paused cloud and a faint distant hum, and let your thoughts move gently across the horizon. Chapter 8. When Gravity Failed. Even briefly. There are moments so short and subtle that the body notices them before the mind can form a sentence. A cup that falls too slowly. A tool that seems to hover for half a heartbeat before dropping. A step that should land with weight but instead feels light, as if the floor rose to meet the foot. These moments do not announce themselves. They slip in and out like a breath taken between thoughts. Tonight, we move slowly through accounts where gravity, steady, reliable gravity, appeared to loosen its grip, if only for a second. Begin by settling into your chair and noticing your own weight. The way your body presses downward, the way the floor supports you without question. Gravity is the quiet agreement between your body and the world. It does not need to be proven. It is always there. That is why the stories in this chapter are so unsettling in their calmness. They do not describe chaos or flight. They describe small deviations, tiny pauses in the fall that leave people blinking and checking their hands. Let us start with a common kind of report. Objects that fall, but not as they should. A factory worker drops a wrench from waist height. Instead of clattering instantly to the floor, the wrench descends slowly, turning once, gently, as if moving through thick air. It lands without bounce. The worker looks around, expecting laughter or shock, but no one else seems to have noticed. Later, another worker on a different shift tells a similar story about a bolt that drifted rather than dropped. These are the kinds of accounts that pass quietly between co-workers, not shouted across rooms. There are ordinary explanations for many such experiences. Perception can be fooled. Time can feel stretched when attention sharpens. The brain sometimes fills in missing frames, smoothing motion into something it was not. Fatigue, stress, and expectation can all shape how movement is perceived. In certain lighting conditions, objects can appear to move slower or faster than they are. These explanations are real and important. They account for many reported oddities without requiring anything extraordinary. But then there are cases where multiple people witness the same brief failure at the same time. A construction crew watches a stack of boards tip and then pause mid-fall for a breath before crashing down. Several workers shout at once. Later, they compare notes and find their descriptions align. A pilot reports a moment where loose items in the cockpit seem to float slightly before settling back into place. The instruments show no turbulence. The weather is calm. The pilot logs it as an anomaly and moves on, but the memory stays sharp. There are also stories from sports fields and gymnasiums. A basketball player leaps for a rebound and feels as if the hang time is longer than it should be, not in the poetic sense athletes often describe, but in a way that feels mechanical, almost delayed. The ball, too, seems to linger in the air before descending. Teammates later mention the same sensation, describing it as a strange lightness that passed quickly. These moments do not break games. They do not cause injuries. They simply leave a faint question behind. Scientists have studied gravity with extraordinary precision. We know it as a fundamental interaction, described elegantly by equations and tested in laboratories and space missions. On Earth, gravity varies slightly depending on altitude and local geology. Mountains and dense rock formations can create tiny differences. Tides tug at the planet, and rotation introduces small effects. None of these variations are large enough to make objects float or fall slowly in everyday life. That is why reports of brief, localized gravity oddities feel so odd. They seem to defy the scale at which gravity usually changes. Some physicists entertain the idea, carefully and quietly, that under very specific conditions localized gravitational anomalies could occur. These would not be dramatic. They would be subtle, fleeting, and hard to detect with instruments not tuned to the right scale. Changes in space-time curvature, interactions with electromagnetic fields, or even unknown properties of matter could, in theory, produce tiny deviations. This is not a claim of certainty. It is an acknowledgement that our understanding, while deep, may not be complete in every corner. There are also accounts from people who work with heavy machinery. Crane operators speak of loads that feel lighter for a moment, then resume their normal weight. Elevator technicians mention cars that hesitate mid-drop without mechanical cause. In one calm report, a maintenance worker described stepping off a ladder and feeling suspended for a fraction of a second before landing. He checked the ladder, the floor, his boots. Everything was as it should be. He told the story later not as a warning but as a curiosity. Children, with their simple language, often describe these moments with striking clarity. A child might say, "The toy floated," or "I jumped and didn't come down right away." Parents often smile and chalk it up to imagination. Yet sometimes the parent witnesses it too, a balloon that sinks faster than expected one day, and slower the next, a dropped spoon that seems to drift. These shared moments are usually brushed aside, but they linger in memory like a note that does not quite resolve. There are also stories tied to specific places. Certain factories, tunnels, or open fields are said to produce these effects more often. Workers joke about light spots on the floor where tools behave strangely. Hikers talk about a patch of trail where steps feel oddly buoyant. Again, geology can explain some of this. Uneven ground, visual cues, air currents, but not all of it. When multiple independent witnesses report the same sensation in the same location, attention sharpens. Some observers notice that gravity oddities sometimes cluster with other anomalies. A slow fall coincides with a power flicker. A hovering object occurs during a moment of unusual quiet, as if sound itself has softened. In a few accounts, clocks skip a beat at the same time. These clusters are rare, but they are compelling because they suggest a broader disturbance rather than a single sensory trick. They hint that gravity, time, sound, and light might be more intertwined than we usually notice. To imagine this gently, picture the world as a tightly woven fabric. Gravity is one of its strongest threads. Most of the time, the fabric holds firm. But if a small tug passes through, too quick to tear, too soft to see, the fabric may ripple just enough for a momentary slack to appear. An object falls into that slack and behaves differently for a breath. Then the fabric tightens again. The metaphor is simple, but it helps the mind rest with the idea without strain. There are also whispers from experimental labs, never official statements, just passing remarks that some instruments occasionally record tiny anomalies that are difficult to reproduce. A sensor reads slightly off for a second, then returns to baseline. Engineers recalibrate and move on. Most of these blips are noise, some may be hints. Science advances by chasing such hints carefully, without assuming their meaning too quickly. As you listen, let your body relax into its weight again. Feel the chair beneath you. Notice how steady gravity feels now. The contrast matters. It reminds us that these stories are unusual precisely because the norm is so stable. That stability is what makes a deviation noticeable, even if it lasts only a blink. To keep you with us, remember that later chapters will explore moments when sound behaves strangely, when surveillance footage shows impossible motion, and when entire cities report a shared sense of wrongness. The gravity stories connect to those, not by proving anything, but by adding another piece to the mosaic. Each piece alone can be explained away. Together, they form a pattern that is harder to ignore. Picture a wrench drifting, a ball hanging a fraction too long in the air, a step that feels lighter than it should. Hold these images gently. They are not warnings. They are invitations to notice how even the most trusted forces may have edges we have not fully explored. When you're ready, let the image fade. Let the world settle back into its reliable pull. Breathe slowly and prepare to move onward, carrying with you the quiet thought that even gravity may sometimes pause, just long enough to be seen. Chapter 9. The global hum that was never explained. Long after the lights are turned off and the world settles into its nighttime rhythm, there are moments when silence is not truly silent. In these moments, some people become aware of a sound that feels less like noise and more like pressure, a low, steady vibration, not loud enough to clearly hear, yet strong enough to be felt. It does not come from a single direction. It seems to exist everywhere at once, as if the air itself is gently trembling. This phenomenon has come to be known simply as the hum. For those who have never experienced it, the idea sounds vague and easy to dismiss. A background noise, a distant engine, a personal sensitivity. And in many cases, those explanations may be true. Our modern world is filled with low-frequency sounds, machinery, traffic, power systems, industrial plants, even ocean waves interacting with coastlines. These sounds can travel far and pass through walls, creating vibrations that only some people notice. Hearing differences, age, stress levels, and quiet environments can all make the hum more noticeable to certain individuals, but the stories do not end there. The reason the hum continues to quietly trouble researchers and listeners alike is because of its strange consistency. Reports from different countries, different decades, and different cultures describe the same thing: a low-frequency vibration, often strongest at night, often impossible to locate, and often shared by multiple people in the same area at the same time. One of the earliest well-known cases came from a small town where residents began complaining of a persistent rumble that kept them awake. Engineers were brought in, roads were inspected, factories were checked. No single source could be found. Some residents heard it clearly, others heard nothing at all. Those who heard it described the same tone, the same pressure, the same sense that it was not quite sound in the normal sense. It felt internal, as much as external. Over time, similar reports appeared in distant places: coastal cities, inland towns, rural villages. People with no connection to one another described lying awake at night, feeling their chests vibrate slightly, sensing a deep tone that seemed to come from the ground, the sky, and their own bodies all at once. Some compared it to a faraway diesel engine that never turned off. Others said it felt like standing near a massive generator hidden just out of sight. Scientists studying low-frequency acoustics acknowledge that infrasound, sound below the range of human hearing, can have physical and psychological effects. It can cause discomfort, anxiety, headaches, and a sense of unease. Natural sources like ocean waves, wind interacting with terrain, and even earthquakes can produce infrasound. Man-made sources such as turbines, compressors, and ventilation systems can as well. These explanations account for many localized cases of the hum, yet there are reports that do not fit neatly into these categories. Some describe the hum appearing suddenly in areas with no new construction, no industrial change, no weather shift. In a few cases, entire neighborhoods noticed it begin on the same night. Residents compared notes the next morning, surprised to find that others had been kept awake by the same low vibration. Measurements taken later showed nothing unusual. The hum had faded as quietly as it arrived. More intriguing still are the accounts where the hum seemed synchronized with other strange effects. People reported clocks running slightly slow or fast during the same nights they heard the sound. Power grids experienced brief, unexplained fluctuations. Pets behaved restlessly, pacing or whining as if reacting to something unseen. In some cases, individuals experienced vivid dreams, sleep paralysis, or a strong sense that time felt stretched or compressed. There are stories from night shift workers who noticed the hum while entire cities slept. Security guards, hospital staff, truck drivers, and factory operators described standing still in quiet corridors or empty streets when the vibration became noticeable. It was not loud enough to record easily, yet it felt impossible to ignore. Some reported that when they moved their heads or changed rooms, the sensation changed slightly, as if interacting with the structure of the space itself. A particularly unsettling pattern emerges in reports where the hum was experienced simultaneously across large distances. People in different regions, unaware of each other, later described hearing or feeling it during the same narrow window of time. These cases are difficult to verify, yet the similarities in description are striking. A low tone, a sense of pressure, a feeling that something was on in the background of reality. Speculation grows quietly around these synchronized events. Some suggest deep Earth processes, movements far below the crust that do not always register as earthquakes. Others consider interactions between the planet's magnetic field and human-made systems. Still others point to atmospheric phenomena not yet fully understood. These ideas are discussed cautiously, without dramatic claims, because evidence is subtle and fleeting. Then there are the rumors that circulate beneath official explanations. Stories from technicians and analysts who allegedly noticed unusual readings during hum events. Frequencies that did not match known sources. Signals that appeared structured rather than random. According to these accounts, the data was not alarming, but it was strange enough to be set aside rather than published. Not because it was false, but because it did not fit existing models. Some listeners believe the hum may not be a sound at all, but a byproduct of something else, an interaction between systems, layers, or processes that normally operate invisibly. In this view, the hum is not a message, but a side effect. Like the faint whine of electronics running behind a wall, it reveals activity without revealing purpose. It suggests that something is operating continuously, quietly, just beyond direct perception. There are also deeply personal accounts tied to moments of heightened awareness. Individuals report that during periods of intense focus, meditation, or emotional transition, the hum becomes clearer. It is not louder, but more noticeable, as if the mind has tuned into a background channel. When attention shifts back to daily concerns, the hum fades again. This has led some to wonder whether perception itself plays a role in detecting whatever produces the sound. Children sometimes describe the hum in simple terms, saying the house is buzzing or that the night feels heavy. Parents often check appliances and reassure them. Occasionally the parents hear it too. These shared experiences are rarely dramatic. They're quiet, fleeting, and easily forgotten unless they repeat. As you rest and listen now, notice the quiet around you. Notice how stillness can contain layers. Even silence has texture. The idea of the hum does not ask you to believe in anything specific. It simply invites you to consider that the world may carry signals we have not fully learned to interpret. Later chapters will explore footage, messages, and memories that hint at structured patterns beneath apparent randomness. The hum fits among them as a kind of background tone, steady, elusive, and persistent. It does not demand attention. It waits patiently for those who happen to notice it. Imagine the planet at night, cities dim and roads quiet, oceans moving slowly under moonlight. Somewhere within that vast calm, a low vibration passes through air, ground, and thought. Most never hear it. Some pause and listen, and for a moment the world feels slightly different, as if another layer has gently brushed against our own. Let that image soften and fade. Breathe slowly. Allow the idea to rest without needing resolution. The journey continues, and with it, more glimpses of the subtle places where reality seems to whisper rather than speak. Chapter 10. Surveillance footage that shouldn't exist. There is a quiet trust we place in cameras. They do not dream, they do not forget, they do not fill gaps with imagination. A camera records what passes in front of it, frame by frame, without emotion or intent. That trust is what makes certain pieces of surveillance footage so unsettling. Because when something appears on camera that no one remembers seeing in real life, or when the footage shows events unfolding in ways that feel impossible, the mind struggles to find a place to rest. Most surveillance footage is boring by design. Empty hallways, still parking lots, corridors washed in fluorescent light, hours of nothing happening at all. This monotony is what makes anomalies stand out so sharply. A single missing frame, a person who appears in one moment and vanishes the next, a shadow that moves without a source. These are not dramatic scenes. They are subtle, almost gentle violations of expectation. Many people first encounter such footage online presented without context. A security camera in a store shows a customer walking down an aisle. The image flickers for less than a second. When the picture stabilizes, the customer is gone. No doorway nearby, no blind corner, no exit in the skipped frames. The camera continues recording as if nothing unusual has happened. Employees later insist no one noticed anything strange at the time. The footage is reviewed, replayed, slowed down. The disappearance remains. There are technical explanations for some of these events. Cameras drop frames. Compression artifacts can distort motion. Power fluctuations can cause brief resets. Digital systems are not perfect, and errors can create the illusion of impossible movement. In many cases, these explanations are valid. Engineers can point to known faults and reproduce similar effects under controlled conditions. But then there are cases where those explanations fall short. Footage reviewed by professionals shows no missing data, no corrupted frames, no signs of tampering. Timestamps remain consistent. Multiple cameras from different angles show the same anomaly. A person pauses mid-step and simply is not there in the next frame, while the environment around them continues unchanged. These are the moments that quietly unsettle even experienced technicians. Consider the accounts from night shift security guards, people who spend hours watching live feeds. They speak of moments when a hallway camera shows movement, but when they look up from their desk to the actual hallway, nothing is there. Then, seconds later, the camera shows the hallway empty again, as if the movement never happened. The guards often assume fatigue, rub their eyes, and continue working. Yet some report the same patterns repeating over months, always subtle, never dramatic enough to escalate. There are stories from hospitals where cameras capture patients standing beside their beds at times when records show them asleep. Nurses checking the rooms find no one standing. Later footage shows the patient lying down the entire time, except for a brief segment where the standing figure appears. These incidents are usually dismissed as reflections, lighting effects, or staff passing by. Yet in a few cases, the figure's outline matches the patient precisely, down to posture and clothing. Another recurring theme involves frozen crowds. In some public surveillance videos, a group of people appears motionless for several seconds, while one individual continues moving normally. Cars stop. Pedestrians pause mid-step. Then suddenly, everything resumes at once. The moving individual later reports nothing unusual. They remember walking, checking their phone, or adjusting their bag. They do not recall the world pausing around them. The cameras, however, record a clear difference in motion. Technicians reviewing these clips sometimes suggest frame rate issues or buffering delays. But when time codes remain continuous and audio, if present, does not skip, the explanation grows thinner, especially when multiple cameras capture the same pause from different angles, each synchronized in time. There are also accounts of footage that appears to record events before they happen. A security camera shows a door opening, then closing. Minutes later, the door opens again in real time, matching the earlier footage exactly. When staff review the recording, they find the first opening occurred before anyone approached the door. These incidents are rare and often quietly forgotten, but they leave behind a lingering sense of unease. Rumours circulate of footage that never makes it to public view. Clips reportedly seized, deleted, or locked away after showing something too difficult to explain. According to these stories, authorities or private companies intervene not out of fear, but out of uncertainty. When something cannot be categorized, it becomes a liability. It is safer to remove it than to ask questions without answers. Some former technicians describe being instructed to overwrite recordings without review during specific time windows. The reason given is usually routine, storage limits, maintenance cycles, but the timing coincides with reported anomalies. These accounts are impossible to verify fully, yet they follow similar patterns across different regions and industries. What makes surveillance footage especially compelling in discussions of reality glitches is its lack of narrative. There is no storyteller shaping events, no witness interpreting memory. The camera simply records light and motion. If something appears that should not be there or fails to appear when it should, it raises a quiet but persistent question. What exactly is being recorded? One idea, discussed carefully in some technical circles, is that cameras may occasionally capture transitional states that human perception smooths over. Our brains are excellent at filling gaps, creating continuity even when information is incomplete. A camera, by contrast, captures discrete slices of time. If reality itself operates in discrete steps, tiny updates rather than a continuous flow, then a camera might occasionally record a moment that human awareness slides past unnoticed. In this view, disappearances and pauses are not objects leaving reality, but reality updating between frames. The camera catches the update. The human mind does not. This idea remains speculative, but it offers a calm framework that does not require panic or drama. It suggests that what we call glitches may be moments when the stitching between moments becomes briefly visible. There are also stories involving shadows. Footage shows shadows moving independently of their sources, stretching or shifting while the person casting them remains still. Lighting experts often explain these as multiple light sources interacting. Yet some clips show shadows behaving in ways that do not match any visible light. The shadow moves first, the person follows later. The delay is subtle, but it is there. As you listen, imagine sitting in a quiet control room, screens glowing softly in the dark. Hours pass, nothing happens. Then, without warning, something on one screen feels wrong, not frightening, just wrong. You replay it once, twice. The footage does not change. The feeling remains. This chapter connects gently to what came before. Gravity that hesitates, sounds without sources, footage that captures what eyes do not. Each suggests that reality may have layers of operation we are not meant to notice, yet occasionally do. Not as a threat, but as a reminder of complexity. As you settle deeper into rest, allow these images to drift without needing resolution. Empty hallways, flickering frames, a figure present, then gone. Let them pass like clouds across a night sky. The journey continues, and ahead we will explore messages hidden in noise, patterns buried in static, and whispers that may not be random at all. For now, breathe slowly. Let the glow of the screens fade. Let the silence return. Chapter 11. Messages hidden in noise and static. There is a moment late at night when the world grows quiet enough that even the smallest sounds feel important. The faint hiss of a radio between stations, the soft crackle of an old television left on low volume, the gentle rush of static that seems empty at first, until the mind begins to notice shapes within it. Tonight, we move slowly into that space, where noise no longer feels random, and where many believe messages have been hiding in plain sound all along. Static has always been treated as meaningless. It is what remains when a signal is lost, when information breaks down into chaos. Yet humans are pattern-seeking by nature. We hear words in rushing water, faces in clouds, meaning in coincidence. Science explains much of this as the brain doing what it does best, finding order so we can survive and understand our world. And in many cases, this explanation is enough. But there is another side to static that has never fully settled. Because again and again, people across different countries, decades and technologies report hearing the same thing. Not vague impressions, but clear tones, repeating numbers, short phrases, and structured rhythms appearing inside noise where nothing structured should exist. One of the most well-known examples comes from shortwave radio listeners. For decades, hobbyists scanning frequencies late at night stumbled upon strange broadcasts. A calm voice reading numbers in steady sequences. No introduction, no explanation, just numbers, spoken clearly, sometimes accompanied by tones or music. These transmissions appeared and disappeared without warning. Governments never fully explained them, though many quietly acknowledged their existence. Official explanations suggested coded communication, espionage tools meant to send instructions without revealing meaning. This may explain some of these broadcasts, but it does not explain everything. Because listeners notice patterns that went beyond simple code. The same sequences appearing on unrelated frequencies, broadcast restarting mid-sentence after signal loss, as if the message existed independently of the transmission method. Then there are the recordings made unintentionally. A baby monitor picking up whispers when no one is in the room. A digital recorder left running overnight, capturing voices speaking slowly through background hum. a security microphone registering faint words during moments of electrical interference. In many cases, people only noticed these voices during playback. They were not heard in real time. These recordings often share common traits. The voices sound distant, calm, and slightly distorted, as if passing through layers. They rarely shout. They do not sound emotional. They speak slowly, sometimes repeating phrases or words. Often the language is simple. Sometimes it is unfamiliar. And sometimes, disturbingly, it seems to respond to questions asked earlier, even when no one was present to hear them. Researchers studying electronic voice phenomena suggest that these are auditory illusions, random noise shaped by expectation. The brain, desperate for meaning, fills gaps and turns static into speech. Controlled experiments show that when people are told what to listen for, they are more likely to hear it. This is true, and it explains many recordings. But once again, there are cases that resist easy dismissal, situations where multiple people independently hear the same words, where phrases appear repeatedly across different devices, different locations, and different times, where recordings capture information unknown to the person recording at the time, only to be understood later. One particularly unsettling pattern involves messages embedded across unrelated broadcasts. A television channel switching off for the night shows static, while a nearby radio produces the same low tone. At the same moment, a phone-left recording picks up a repeating rhythm. Later, analysis shows the patterns align in timing, as if responding to a shared source rather than individual devices. Some technicians claim that during power fluctuations, signals appear briefly that do not belong to any known system. Frequencies overlap in ways they should not. Data appears where silence should be. These events are fleeting, easy to miss, and almost impossible to reproduce on demand. They are often logged, noted, and then forgotten. There are also stories tied to older technology. Analog devices seem especially sensitive. Tape recorders, cathode ray televisions, and early radios are common in these accounts. Some believe this is because analog systems do not clean up noise the way digital systems do. They allow imperfections to pass through. And within those imperfections, something else may slip through as well. Imagine static not as emptiness, but as a kind of fog. Within fog, shapes can move unseen. Sound, too, may carry more than we expect when it is not tightly controlled. If reality has layers, as some quietly suggest, then noise may be the place where those layers overlap most easily. There are rumours, never officially confirmed, of analysts who notice structure in what should have been random noise, patterns repeating across continents, timing aligned with solar activity, power grid changes, or unexplained atmospheric events. According to these whispers, the data was not dismissed because it was meaningless, but because it was too organized to fit existing explanations. Some listeners describe a feeling that accompanies these sounds, a sense of calm rather than fear, a quiet awareness, as if being gently observed rather than threatened. Others report the opposite, a feeling of being watched, of attention turning briefly in their direction. These emotional responses vary, but they are consistent enough to be noted. Children, again, offer some of the most striking accounts. They sometimes respond to static as if it was speech, answering questions no adult hears. Parents often laugh at first, then grow uneasy when the child repeats phrases that later appear in recordings. These moments are rare, but they linger. As you rest now, notice the quiet hum of your own environment. Electronics resting, air moving softly. Even in silence, there is always some noise. The question raised by these stories is not whether noise exists, but whether it is ever truly empty. This chapter prepares us for what comes next. If messages can hide in static, if signals can pass through noise unnoticed, then memory, identity, and awareness may also travel in ways we do not fully understand. Ahead, we will explore children who remember other versions of reality, scientists who stopped asking certain questions, and moments when the world itself seemed to reset. For now, let the static fade into softness. Let the idea settle without strain. Breathe slowly, deeply, and allow the quiet to carry you forward. Chapter 12. Children who remember other versions of reality. There is something naturally disarming about the way children speak. Their words are simple. Their stories are often direct. They do not yet know which thoughts are considered reasonable and which ones are supposed to be kept quiet. Because of this, when children speak about strange memories, adults usually listen with a smile first and concern only later. But across cultures and generations, there are stories that follow the same gentle, unsettling pattern. Children who speak calmly about a world that feels almost like ours, but not quite. These stories often begin in ordinary homes, during ordinary moments. A child pauses while playing and asks a question that feels oddly specific. Why did you move the stairs? Or why is the kitchen on the wrong side now? The parents laugh, assuming the child is confused or pretending. But the child insists, not emotionally, not dramatically, simply stating a fact as they remember it. To them, the memory is not strange. It is familiar. Psychology offers many explanations for this. Children are imaginative. Their memories are flexible. They absorb stories, television, and conversations and weave them together effortlessly. Dreams can blend with waking life. Young minds do not separate fantasy and reality as strictly as adults do. These explanations are real, and they explain many childhood stories very well. And yet, once again, there are cases that quietly resist being explained away so easily. Some children describe places that exist, but not as they are now. They speak of rooms arranged differently, of windows that no longer exist, of doors that lead nowhere today. In some cases, parents later uncover old photographs showing that the house was once laid out exactly as the child described, before renovations that happened long before the child was born. When shown the photos, the child does not react with surprise. They simply nod, as if seeing something expected. Other children speak of families they do not have. They mention siblings who never existed, parents with different jobs, or grandparents who lived in the house instead. When questioned gently, the children do not frame these memories as dreams or stories. They speak in the present tense, as if describing something that still feels current. When adults insist these memories are wrong, the children often grow quiet rather than argumentative, as if confused by the correction. There are also cases where children seem to remember events that never happened in this version of reality, but could have happened in another. A child insists they remember a fire that destroyed part of the neighborhood. No such fire ever occurred. Years later, records reveal that a fire was narrowly prevented by minutes, a gas line shut off just in time. The child remembers the version where it was not. In some families, multiple children report similar memories independently. Siblings describe the same old house, layout, or the same other school they used to attend. These are not shared bedtime stories or repeated phrases. Parents notice that the children speak about these things separately, using their own words, yet describing the same differences. Researchers studying childhood memory acknowledge that young brains are especially good at retaining early impressions, even impressions formed before language. Some believe that children may pick up subtle cues from their environment, stress, nostalgia, unspoken family stories, and turn them into narratives. This too explains many cases, but there are moments that go further. Some children describe other versions of themselves. They speak of having a different name before, or of being older, or of living before things changed. These statements are often delivered without fear. There is no sense of loss or confusion, only observation. A child might say, "I liked it better when the sky was darker," or "before the road went the other way." In a few reported cases, children correctly identify details about people they have never met. They describe a relative who died before they were born, using specific phrases or habits that match family memory. This phenomenon is sometimes discussed alongside reincarnation studies, but there is another angle that feels quieter and closer to home: the idea that memory itself may not belong entirely to one timeline. Some researchers speculate that consciousness may not reset as cleanly as reality does. If reality shifts, updates, or corrects itself, whether through natural processes or something more complex, memory may lag behind. Adults, with their rigid sense of self and time, may lose access to earlier versions quickly. Children, whose sense of identity is still forming, may retain fragments. This could explain why these memories often fade as children grow older. Parents report that by age 6 or 7, the strange statements stop. The child no longer remembers the other layout, the other family, the other way things were. When asked later, they shrug or laugh, unable to recall what once felt obvious. The memory does not turn into trauma, it simply dissolves. There are also emotional patterns worth noting. Children who describe other versions of reality rarely seem distressed by them. They do not speak of fear or danger. Instead, there is often a calm acceptance, sometimes even mild disappointment, like missing a favourite toy that is no longer around. This emotional neutrality is striking. It does not match the panic one might expect if reality truly felt unstable. Teachers occasionally report similar experiences. A child insists a classroom used to be painted a different colour, or that the playground had an extra structure that no one else remembers. When maintenance records are checked, there is no evidence. The teacher moves on. The child adapts. But the moment leaves a quiet trace. There are rumours, difficult to verify, of researchers who notice patterns across many such cases. Children from different regions describing similar types of changes. Room layouts, road directions, building placements. Small, practical details rather than fantastical worlds. Not dragons or magic, but furniture, streets, and routines. Things that matter because they are ordinary. This consistency is what makes these stories linger. If children were inventing freely, one might expect wild variation. Instead, the memories often involve subtle shifts, as if reality were adjusted slightly rather than rebuilt completely. As you listen, imagine a child standing in a familiar room, sensing that something is different but not knowing why. The walls are the same colour, the furniture is there. Yet something feels off, like a melody played in a slightly different key. The child does not panic, they simply mention it aloud. This chapter connects gently to what we have already explored. If messages can hide in noise, if gravity can hesitate, if footage can capture impossible moments, then memory itself may also carry echoes. Children may simply be closer to the edges, where those echoes are still audible. Ahead, we'll explore scientists who quietly stepped away from questions they once pursued, and events that felt like resets rather than accidents. But for now, allow this idea to rest softly. Children remembering other versions of reality does not need to be frightening. It can be seen as evidence of resilience, that even if reality shifts, the human mind finds ways to adapt. Breathe slowly, let the images soften. A different staircase, a room that used to be somewhere else, a memory that fades without pain. The journey continues. Chapter 13. scientists who quietly stopped asking questions. There comes a point in many scientific journeys when curiosity meets uncertainty. Most scientists are trained to ask questions relentlessly, to push boundaries, and to challenge assumptions. Yet throughout history, there are moments when researchers suddenly stop, withdraw, or abandon a line of inquiry, not because they failed, but because the answers, or the anomalies, proved too strange, too unsettling, or simply unexplainable by conventional methods. Tonight, we move slowly into that quiet, often hidden world, where knowledge was sought and then paused, leaving questions lingering in the corners of laboratories, archives, and memories. Consider the story of a physicist who spent years studying time perception and temporal anomalies. He was meticulous, careful, and widely respected. Yet, after observing subtle deviations in particle behavior and recording small discrepancies in repeated experiments, he suddenly stopped publishing. Colleagues noticed, students asked questions. He smiled, offered vague excuses about funding, and moved on to another project. Later, whispers circulated that the experiments hinted at something more profound, a world where time could bend slightly for brief moments, or where reality itself might lag unpredictably. Nothing was ever confirmed, and the documentation vanished quietly into lab archives. Another example comes from a group of cognitive scientists studying memory persistence. Over several years, they compiled data showing that individuals occasionally remembered sequences of events that appeared inconsistent with the historical record, in ways that were not simply false memories. The anomalies were subtle, small discrepancies, often dismissed as coincidence. But one senior researcher began to notice patterns suggesting that memory might not only be fallible, but potentially affected by shifts in reality itself. Reports and papers prepared for peer review were never submitted. Team members later recounted that the lead researcher had become increasingly hesitant to speak about his findings, as though aware that drawing attention could be dangerous, or at least unwelcome in the broader academic community. There are also stories from the field of astrophysics. Some scientists tracking unusual fluctuations in cosmic background radiation began to notice transient repeating signals that did not match known models of the universe. The signals were weak, intermittent, and easily explained away as noise, but only just barely. Some researchers published cautiously, suggesting statistical anomalies, but others quietly stopped pursuing the signals, citing fatigue, pressure from funding agencies, or the unlikelihood that these signals would ever lead to a concrete theory. Their notebooks and preliminary data were archived, inaccessible, and later some files disappeared entirely. These quiet retreats are not evidence of weakness, deception, or failure. On the contrary, they illustrate the limits of human understanding when faced with phenomena that brush against the edges of perception and knowledge. Scientists are trained to be skeptical, to demand reproducibility, and to rely on measurable evidence. When phenomena repeatedly resist all attempts at measurement, the response is often to step back. Not from fear, but from the subtle realization that reality may operate in ways their instruments cannot fully capture. Some researchers in experimental physics and consciousness studies have reported unexplained patterns emerging in carefully controlled environments. Machines designed to measure physical constants occasionally record anomalies that do not replicate. Devices intended to track neural activity in test subjects sometimes show simultaneous deviations across multiple participants that appear synchronized beyond probability. In most cases, these readings are dismissed as equipment error, environmental interference, or statistical noise. But in some labs, the anomalies were so persistent that teams quietly stopped recording them, fearing that raising questions might invite ridicule or professional risk. There are accounts from retired scientists who, long after leaving academia, speak more freely. They describe strange phenomena observed during experiments with light, gravity, or time intervals. One recalls equipment that registered events slightly before they occurred, not predictably, but often enough to raise unease. Another mentions patterns in data suggesting minor disruptions in the apparent continuity of physical processes, lasting milliseconds or seconds. These scientists often emphasize that they do not claim to understand, only to report. The anomalies existed, and continuing to investigate proved more unsettling than comforting. Sometimes the cessation of inquiry coincides with institutional pressure. Researchers in highly funded areas occasionally receive indirect guidance to abandon lines of inquiry that could challenge prevailing assumptions. Funding can be withdrawn, promotions delayed, or collaborations quietly severed. These actions rarely come with explicit explanations. Scientists themselves often speak of lost momentum or shifting priorities. Yet whispered stories suggest a deeper unease. The universe may occasionally show glimpses of mechanisms that our minds and instruments are not ready to comprehend, and the social structure of science subtly discourages prolonged attention to these glimpses. Then there are the subtle psychological effects. Some researchers report personal unease when studying anomalies. Sleep disturbances, feelings of disorientation, and a persistent sense that something is slightly off accompany prolonged observation of these subtle irregularities. A physicist studying brief gravitational deviations described waking at night, convinced that time itself had skipped a beat. A neuroscientist tracking repeated déjà vu episodes among participants reported mild anxiety and a growing reluctance to conduct further experiments. These experiences are anecdotal, but they highlight the human aspect of scientific pursuit. Curiosity is balanced against instinctive caution when reality itself behaves unexpectedly. The most compelling evidence comes not from dramatic events, but from patterns of withdrawal. Across disciplines, physics, cognitive science, astronomy, even anthropology, there are individuals who once probed the boundaries of experience, then stopped, leaving hints in notebooks, archived emails, and unpublished manuscripts. The common thread is not failure, but the encounter with phenomena that are inconsistent, subtle, and recurring. The human mind and scientific methodology both struggle with irregularities that are small enough to be overlooked, yet consistent enough to suggest an underlying pattern. Imagine the quiet rooms where these scientists worked, machines humming softly, monitors displaying data streams, notes scribbled carefully in journals. In one moment, everything behaves as expected. In the next, numbers skip slightly. A reading deviates, a sequence repeats or vanishes. The anomaly is small, almost imperceptible, but persistent. For a time, researchers chase it with care, but slowly, methodically, they withdraw. Not because curiosity fails, but because understanding falters. These stories remind us of a subtle truth. The world we experience is both reliable and fragile. The frameworks we rely on, physics, biology, memory, technology, work extraordinarily well most of the time, but at the edges, anomalies persist. And sometimes, those anomalies are strong enough, strange enough, that even the most rational minds step back, leaving questions unanswered. As you rest, consider the quiet work of these scientists, the laboratories left still, the questions suspended mid-air, the data stored in forgotten drawers. Their hesitation is not failure, it is a reflection of encountering something so fundamentally subtle and complex that a pause feels safer than a forced answer. It suggests a world with layers, hints, and structures that may never fully reveal themselves, yet are there, persistent and waiting for notice. Ahead, the journey will take us into moments when reality itself appears to reset, when millions feel the same subtle wrongness at once, and when the cumulative pattern of anomalies hints at something larger than any single event. For now, let your thoughts rest on the quiet courage it takes to stop asking questions when the answers lie just beyond perception, and the calm patience to observe without forcing understanding. Chapter 14. The reset events no one talks about. There are moments in history when the world seems ordinary, steady, and predictable, and yet, quietly, something shifts. People wake up to familiar surroundings, step outside into streets they have walked countless times, only to notice that subtle details have changed. Clocks tick in patterns that feel slightly off. Familiar routes seem displaced. Shadows fall differently. These are not the dramatic collapses of cityscapes or the roaring catastrophes of natural disasters. They are soft, almost imperceptible events, felt more than seen, like the fabric of reality pausing to rearrange itself and then resuming as if nothing had happened. These are the reset events, moments of subtle but widespread discontinuity that are rarely discussed, rarely noticed, and often forgotten. One of the earliest well-documented examples comes from a small town where, for a single night, residents reported that their homes felt unfamiliar. Doors opened in slightly different directions. Furniture appeared shifted by mere inches, yet every household that reported it described similar changes. Clocks that had been synchronized for years suddenly displayed slightly different times, only to return to normal by morning. Engineers checked power lines. Meteorologists checked atmospheric conditions. Nothing unusual was found. Those who experienced the event described a strange sensation of déjà vu, combined with fleeting disorientation, as though the world had paused, edited itself, and resumed without leaving evidence behind. These events are subtle because the human mind is incredibly adept at normalizing inconsistencies. We do not notice every small shift in our environment, and our perception prioritizes coherence over perfect accuracy. Yet when a reset event is large enough to be noticed by multiple people simultaneously, the effect is disorienting. Individuals describe the sensation as a wrongness that is difficult to articulate. Streets feel shorter or longer. Trees appear in places they did not remember. Familiar objects feel foreign. Time seems to have skipped, paused, or stretched slightly. These sensations pass quickly, but they leave a lingering impression. In some cases, reset events coincide with temporary lapses in public infrastructure. Streetlights flash irregularly across multiple neighborhoods at the same time. Telephone and radio signals briefly distort or disappear. Traffic signals freeze in mid-cycle, causing vehicles to stop and resume as if nothing had happened. In these scenarios, millions of people experience the subtle disruptions simultaneously, yet official reports often attribute these events to technical malfunctions, human error, or environmental factors. When the anomalies repeat without clear cause, those explanations grow thin. Consider one event that occurred in a large metropolitan area, documented through eyewitness accounts and some supporting security camera footage. During a single hour, multiple residents reported that street signs appeared to change wording or orientation. Storefronts briefly displayed incorrect signage or colors, only to return to normal after a few minutes. Buses seemed to take different routes than usual, yet the schedules later confirmed no deviations had occurred. Cameras captured these discrepancies, but only partially. Some frames seemed to skip entirely, leaving the movement of objects or people suspended mid-air. Analysts reviewing the footage were unable to reconcile the anomalies with known technical limitations. These reset events are often accompanied by a heightened sense of awareness. People report feeling as though they are just a moment too late or slightly out of step with the environment. Animals react as well. Dogs and cats become unsettled, pacing or hiding. Birds pause mid-flight or circle in unusual patterns. Some witnesses describe a subtle hum in the air or vibrations felt through the ground, akin to the global hum discussed earlier. The combination of visual, auditory and tactile disruptions creates an impression that reality itself has been momentarily manipulated or adjusted. In many cases, researchers have attempted to investigate reset events using modern technology. Time-lapse cameras, environmental sensors and synchronized devices across multiple locations are deployed in hopes of detecting the phenomenon objectively. What emerges from these studies is both fascinating and perplexing. Tiny, inexplicable discrepancies in measurements that cannot be traced to any known cause. Clocks may drift by fractions of a second simultaneously in multiple locations. GPS signals register slight deviations. Electrical systems briefly fluctuate without discernible origin. None of these anomalies alone is significant, yet together they suggest a pattern of subtle, systemic recalibration. Some of the most compelling accounts involve soft resets rather than dramatic shifts. Soft resets do not erase entire structures, histories, or identities. Instead, they adjust details imperceptibly, like a sculptor refining a clay figure while no one watches. Residents notice anomalies only because their minds are attuned to certain consistencies: the position of a chair, the shape of a tree, the timing of a familiar train. When those consistencies are altered, even slightly, the effect is uncanny. People may shrug it off thinking they are mistaken, yet a faint sense of unease persists. There are also instances in which reset events appear to be coordinated across larger regions. Multiple towns, sometimes hundreds of miles apart, report discrepancies in timing, signage, or physical layout that occur within the same hour. Residents in one area describe familiar streets changing, while those in another notice the same phenomenon elsewhere. Attempts to correlate these events with natural or human-made factors fail. No storms, earthquakes, or coordinated maintenance projects coincide with the anomalies. The simultaneous perception of shifts raises the possibility that reality itself is capable of temporary region-wide adjustments. Eyewitnesses often describe the experience with metaphors. It felt like someone rewound a movie and played it again with slight edits. Or the world blinked, and when it opened, a few pieces were different. Others report more subtle emotional impressions, a sense of déjà vu layered over mild disorientation, as if memories from one version of reality were being compared unconsciously to the current one. These reports emphasize that the effect is not purely visual. It engages the senses and cognition together. Some researchers speculate that these reset events could be tied to fluctuations in the structure of time and space, possibly at scales too small or subtle for traditional instruments to measure. Others propose that they are connected to the cumulative anomalies explored in previous chapters: the global hum, unexplained memory persistence, and fleeting glitches in human perception. In this framework, reset events are the moments when these subtle phenomena become temporarily visible, hinting at a larger underlying mechanism quietly operating behind the veneer of everyday life. There are also narratives from individuals who actively seek out reset events. Amateur observers track environmental cues, unusual animal behavior, or minor discrepancies in public infrastructure, hoping to detect the moment when reality adjusts. Their accounts describe the events not as catastrophic or threatening, but as mesmerizing, like witnessing the faint pulse of existence itself. They describe a strange serenity, a quiet fascination, as if reality is revealing itself in whispers rather than shouts. As you imagine these moments, picture the world at night or in the early hours before dawn. Streets are quiet, houses stand still, clocks tick. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, details begin to shift. A streetlight flickers, a sign rotates slightly. The pattern of shadows moves just a fraction. The world feels slightly out of sync, but it is calm, and the changes are gentle, almost intentional. By morning, the world has resumed its usual rhythm, and most people have already forgotten the subtle disturbances. These reset events remind us that our perception of reality is not absolute. It is fluid, adaptive, and sometimes gently malleable. They illustrate that even in a world governed by order, there are layers of imperfection, fluctuation, and quiet adjustment. And they suggest that the anomalies we have explored, glitches in memory, unexplained sounds, unusual behavior, and strange objects, are not isolated. They're part of a continuum, moments where the system we inhabit shows signs of underlying processes beyond immediate comprehension. As you rest and listen, consider the subtle textures of your environment, the hum of electricity, the gentle sway of a tree, the rhythm of your own breathing. Within these ordinary patterns lies the extraordinary, the possibility that the world may shift slightly, while leaving no trace but the faint sensation that something has changed. Let this thought drift gently without alarm, like a soft wind brushing across still waters. Chapter 15. The day reality almost failed completely. There is a particular kind of silence that falls over the world when countless eyes witness something they cannot explain. It is not loud, not dramatic in the way we expect disasters to be, but it carries weight because it is collective. Imagine millions of people going about their day, noticing that something about their surroundings feels off, yet unable to articulate it fully. That was the essence of the day reality almost failed completely. A day when minor glitches, subtle misalignments, and quiet distortions converged, giving the impression that the very fabric of existence was trembling, hesitating, and almost unraveling. It began in the morning, quietly. Across different continents, people reported unusual synchrony and glitches that were normally isolated. A commuter in Tokyo noticed street signs flicker and change briefly. A bus driver in London experienced the sensation of walking through a street that seemed rearranged, with traffic lights appearing in slightly different locations than remembered. In New York, residents reported clocks across the city briefly freezing, then resuming a few seconds later, creating an uncanny rhythm that affected everyone simultaneously. None of these incidents were catastrophic individually, yet when combined, they formed a pattern that suggested something systemic, a near global anomaly unfolding in real time. Throughout the day, more subtle distortions appeared. Birds flew in unfamiliar formations, pausing mid-flight, as if suspended in invisible grids. Shadows moved independently of their sources, flickering against walls and sidewalks in ways that defied ordinary understanding. People across various regions described a peculiar sensation, as though their own actions were slightly delayed, or that the world responded to them a moment too late. Even water in fountains and taps seemed to ripple oddly, forming miniature patterns that repeated briefly before settling back into normal flow. Those who noticed these phenomena reported a sense of calm confusion, curiosity intertwined with unease. Technology, too, faltered in ways that were impossible to ignore. Security cameras captured images of people appearing and disappearing mid-step, while surveillance footage in different countries recorded nearly identical temporal anomalies at the same time. Phones experienced brief freezes, Video calls displayed participants slightly out of sync. In some locations, electricity fluctuated subtly, enough to dim lights for milliseconds, barely perceptible, yet collectively felt across entire neighborhoods. Power engineers later reported no mechanical fault, no human error, nothing to explain the simultaneous deviations. What made this day so remarkable was the convergence of anomalies previously considered isolated. Gravity hesitated briefly in a handful of industrial zones, causing loose objects to hover or drift in slow motion. The worldwide hum, heard intermittently for decades, spiked in frequency and intensity, noticeable even to casual listeners in quiet environments. Those already attuned to previous glitches, people who had reported déjà vu loops, Mandela effect discrepancies or minor resets, noticed that all these phenomena were occurring at once, overlapping like ripples in a vast pond. Eyewitnesses across multiple cities provided similar accounts of environmental distortion. Trees and buildings seemed slightly displaced, as if the world had shifted while no one was looking. Roads that were familiar for years appeared to curve differently. Doors opened into rooms that felt rearranged. Yet, in most cases, the changes were so subtle that only those paying careful attention detected them. The mind, seeking consistency, often filled in the gaps, leaving ordinary observers unaware of the anomalies entirely. Amid the visual and tactile discrepancies, auditory anomalies became pronounced. The global hum aligned, in some reports, with transient pulses that seemed almost musical, brief sequences that did not match any known source. Some people noted whispers, faint, unintelligible murmurs, seeming to emanate from empty streets, quiet homes, or even electronic devices. These sounds were neither loud nor frightening, yet they were persistent enough to draw attention, creating a sense of collective curiosity and mild unease. Interestingly, children appeared particularly sensitive to the anomalies of the day. They pointed out streets looking different, houses not quite right, or shadows behaving strangely. Some spoke of memories from before things changed, echoing experiences reported in previous chapters. Parents often smiled initially, thinking their children's observations were imaginative, only to find them corroborated by subtle environmental oddities: a streetlight slightly misaligned, a window that seemed to have shifted, a familiar path that felt off by a few inches. Experts in multiple fields, psychologists, engineers, physicists, and cognitive scientists, have speculated about the underlying mechanisms of such convergence events. One possibility is that the day represented a system-wide soft reset, a temporary recalibration of reality that allowed anomalies to manifest across multiple layers of perception, physical laws, and consciousness simultaneously. Such a reset would be imperceptible under ordinary conditions, but when observed collectively, it might appear as though reality had almost faltered entirely. Historical records surprisingly contain hints of similar days. Diaries, news reports, and personal journals occasionally describe entire towns or cities experiencing a sensation that things were not as they should be. People report clocks stopping, objects disappearing and reappearing, and streets behaving in subtly different ways. Many of these accounts were dismissed at the time as exaggeration or coincidence. In retrospect, these events may have been minor precedents of the day we are examining, a slow accumulation of anomalies culminating in a moment of widespread temporal and spatial irregularity. The day's events were not violent, catastrophic, or overtly threatening. There were no explosions, no crashes, no panicked crowds. Instead, there was a pervasive sense that reality's usual rules had been softened, adjusted, and tested. People continued with their routines, perhaps sensing only the faintest uncertainty. The anomalies were enough to create unease, yet gentle enough to avoid panic. The balance was uncanny, as if the universe had allowed a brief glimpse behind the curtain of its operational framework. As night fell, the anomalies began to fade, retreating from conscious perception. Streetlights resumed consistent illumination. Clocks regained their proper rhythm. Gravity returned to its ordinary function. Objects settled in their expected positions, and the global hum returned to its usual low-level background state. Those attuned to the day's irregularities noted a subtle, lingering effect, a feeling that the world was slightly more complex than it had seemed the day before, that reality was both solid and surprisingly pliable. The implications of this day are profound. It suggests that the glitches we've explored, time loops, disappearances, Mandela effects, strange objects, anomalous skies, NPC-like behavior, surveillance footage, hidden messages in noise, and children remembering other realities are not isolated curiosities. They are part of a continuum, interconnected threads in a larger tapestry. And on this day they all converged, offering a rare glimpse at the structure behind our everyday perception. As you reflect on this, imagine standing at the edge of understanding, observing reality as a vast, intricate system that occasionally hesitates, shifts, or recalibrates in ways that the human mind is only beginning to sense. The day reality almost failed completely was not catastrophic, but it was revealing. It was a quiet demonstration that the universe may be far more subtle, complex, and interwoven than it allows us to perceive. And as you let this thought settle, let it drift gently into your consciousness like the soft flicker of a candle in a dark room, illuminating the edges of what we call ordinary existence.